Good. Well, again, thank you for coming. And to me, it's morning. I'm going to keep saying morning. I'm sorry about that, but I appreciate you guys all being here. I see some names out there that I know. And so this is a great opportunity for me to tell you a little bit about our program, but specifically about the one that I'm really invested in recently, and that's our therapeutic horticulture program for University of Florida students that are experiencing mental and academic distress. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that program a little bit. Quick background, we have been based in Wilmot Botanical Gardens, which is a 5-acre campus on the University of Florida. I'm sorry, 5-acre garden that's on the campus of University of Florida. This is an image of our greenhouse that we've been operating out of since we moved in here in 2014. And it's a beautiful site where we've been incredibly fortunate to be part of this. We're on the health science portion of the campus, so we're surrounded by medical and research facilities. Lots of patients and their families and healthcare staff wander through these gardens, and we get the chance to interact with them, so that's great. However, due to reasons beyond my control, we are actually moving out of that space. I'm sad about it, but I'm also looking toward the future. I'm excited about this. We are actually moving to this site, which is just down the road, and it is the horticultural sciences teaching farm. And so it's a very different setup. It's much more farm than garden. We're going to be moving into one of the greenhouses and using the outdoor teaching space as our program space. So we're excited about this because I think it's going to sort of turn over a new page for us, a new chapter in a lot of ways, where we'll be surrounded by even more students. There'll be lots of exciting projects and research and student managed plots and all sorts of things going on. So I actually think that especially for the student program, we're going to have a wider reach. So I'm really excited about that. That actually happens on June 15th. So we're going to be busy these next few days getting that move happening. So just a little bit of information on our program. Our therapeutic horticulture program was launched in 2012. I joined as a volunteer. Actually, at that point, I heard about this through the Master Gardener program that I was in. And so in this year, we started with our first group, which was a group of veterans with bipolar disorder. In 2019, we launched the certificate in horticultural therapy. My position went from volunteer to part-time to full-time, and then they actually created a faculty position for me at University of Florida to create a certificate in horticultural therapy and also to expand the programming that we were doing and the research that we were doing. So my appointment is actually 50% research and 50% teaching. We, over the years, have served about 18, maybe a little bit more than that, unique client groups, a pretty diverse variety. And one of the reasons for that is because we are grant and donation based in terms of the programming that we provide. So although that can be a struggle from time to time, more than time to time, it's also a kind of a great opportunity because it means that if we see a grant opportunity or a possibility for a donation that's associated with a particular client group, then we can, apply for that. And so we've had a lot of different groups that we've gotten to work with, and it's been really rewarding and, amazing learning experience. We launched our first research project in 2014 and have done several since then. I think I've got a table here to show you some of them. Some of the client groups that we've worked with in the therapeutic horticulture program over the years, I mentioned the veterans with bipolar disorder. We've also worked with women veterans and veterans with spinal cord injury and disease. We've worked with a lot of different adult populations, those with end-stage kidney disease, various types of cancer, movement disorders. We had a Parkinson's group and a Parkinson's care partner group. We've also worked with adults with stroke. We are currently also working at our psychiatric hospital where we deliver therapeutic horticulture programming there once a week to all 4 units that are there. We've worked with inpatients in the ECT, electric convulsive therapy unit at University of Florida, folks that had severe depression. We also work with adults and emerging adults that are in addiction recovery. We have a residential recovery center associated with University of Florida. And then we've also had several groups of young adults and adults with autism, with various kinds of developmental disabilities. And then the group I'm really going to talk about today are university students that are struggling with stress, anxiety, depression, and loneliness. These are some of the research projects that we've done at University of Florida. The top is our most recent. This is actually, hopefully will come out in the next month or so. It is looking at our student research, but looking to see if there's any difference between undergraduate and graduate students in terms of the effects, the benefits of therapeutic horticulture. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also published a paper last fall on the effects of therapeutic horticulture on student well-being and academic resilience. We have a paper published for women with gynecologic cancer and how therapeutic horticulture was beneficial for those. We've done some research and published a paper on chronic low back pain. This was an interesting study because it was looking both at the effects of the therapeutic horticulture program on the physical aspects of back pain, but also on the feasibility of therapeutic horticulture for this particular population. You know, would people be interested in participating in therapeutic horticulture for low back pain? We did do a research project on folks with Parkinson's and their care partners. We did not publish that because we just didn't have enough good, rigorous data to be able to do that. We struggled with recruitment for that group, and just it was a great lessons learned type thing, and I think it was really beneficial for the participants, but we just didn't feel like there was enough to publish there. One of our master's students who was involved with our program did a research study on looking at healthy women and determining whether therapeutic horticulture or gardening would be more beneficial versus art activities. And what we were looking at here was trying to determine whether the benefits were really about the social community building thing, or did they really have to do with the differences between gardening and art? That publication actually won 2 awards, which was exciting, one from the American Horticultural Therapy Association, and then the other one from a University of Florida high impact publication. So we were really excited about that. We also did a research project and eventually published a paper. I mentioned the ECT group we had a control group here, so we were trying to determine some dosage effects here. And then one of the early papers was also on people with end-stage kidney disease, so who were undergoing dialysis 3 times a week, and the effects of therapeutic horticulture on that group of patients, we found some good benefits, so that was great. And then finally, the last two, both of these were unpublished, but the one on effects of gardening on brain activity in healthy women, this was another master's thesis project with a grad student that came in, and it was a really cool project because we actually were doing fMRI on the brain and looking at some survey measures like depression and stress and things like that, and did find some really positive changes, which were exciting, and even changes in the brain. Unfortunately, that didn't get published. It should have, but I think the poor graduate student just burned out and just couldn't get to that next step. So who knows? Maybe we can go back at some point and get that published. And then finally, we did have a research project with veterans with spinal cord injury and disease, but again, that didn't get published. We just didn't have enough data. Our sample size wasn't large enough to really be able to make a clear determination. Although anecdotally, we felt like it was a very helpful program. So why students? Why were we interested in students? Well, a lot of information was coming out on the struggles of students across the country. And working at a university, I was seeing firsthand the growing mental health struggles of students that were in my classes, student volunteers in my programs, student employees even. And I will say that this was happening before COVID. COVID certainly exacerbated the situation, but this was, and the research will tell you this was a growing issue before COVID. At the time that we started this, I had one child, a girl in middle school, a girl in high school, and a boy in college, and I could see at all of their levels of education and in their schools that struggle with stress and anxiety. Our counseling and wellness center at the University of Florida was overwhelmed, just as all centers and colleges and universities, at least in the United States, have been. Counselors were in great demand. Our CWC, that's our counseling and wellness center, had 12 openings that they were struggling to fill, and that was not unusual around the United States. So Finally, our therapeutic horticulture program on campus that I've just told you about served non-student populations as the primary client. And I was always feeling like we should find some ways to serve our own students more directly. And I could see that the students that were volunteering in our program were gaining some benefits by being part of this therapeutic horticulture community. So it just made sense to find some new ways to serve our students. So I started to do some digging in the research about student mental health. And one of the great sources that we have in the US is the National College Health Assessment, which is conducted by the American College Health Association. It's a research survey that's conducted twice a year, and it collects very precise data on a wide variety of health and wellness issues that impact student populations and affects the students' academic performance. It has surveyed over 2.5 million students at more than 1,000 institutions in the US, and it really is the largest known comprehensive data set on the health of college students. The Healthy Minds Network's annual survey is another one. This is the Healthy Minds Study. You may have heard of it. And it examines mental health, service utilization, and then other kinds of related issues among undergraduate and graduate students. This Healthy Minds Network, or the survey, was started in 2007, and it's been conducted over 675 colleges and universities with almost 1 million survey participants. So lots of really good information in here. Since starting this work, I have found studies on student mental health in many, many countries. It's not just in the United States, so many countries across the globe. And among the top concerns are an increase in stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, and then the effect that those things can have, not just on health and well-being, but also on academic performance. Our counseling and wellness center was overloaded, as I mentioned, so I wondered if there might be something we could do to help alleviate that pressure on campus. So at first, I was really just thinking about this as purely a service to our students on campus, something that could help them to alleviate the stress and the loneliness and the anxiety. I knew that therapeutic horticulture did those things, so I knew it would help students, but I was really just thinking this is a program for students. But then as I thought about it more and I did more research and realized how big of an issue this was, I started to wonder if maybe we could develop some kind of a useful intervention that could be shared with other schools, since this mental health epidemic was happening all over. So we decided to make this a research project. I kind of felt obligated to do that. So the basic question was pretty clear. Would a therapeutic horticulture program help University of Florida students struggling with mental health issues? But of course, to be able to really measure, be rigorous about that measurement, the ability of the therapeutic horticulture program to help, we needed to be more specific. First of all, what did we mean by a therapeutic horticulture program? And also, what did we mean by helping students? We needed to define those things. So, starting with the program, we wanted to create a structured therapeutic horticulture program. In other words, a program that we planned out ahead of time that had a particular structure and order that could be duplicated for multiple groups. It would also have components within that structure that we believed would contribute to helping the students. Knowing that the top concerns are increasing stress, anxiety, depression, and loneliness, and the effect that these things can have on health and well-being, it seemed very logical for us to partner with the University of Florida Counseling and Wellness Center. Now, although health and wellness ranks above academic performance for many of us, the reality is that I work at a large public university that has a large interest in academic performance and getting students to graduation. If we could show through our program and our research that therapeutic horticulture could help with these mental health struggles, and then that their strengthened mental health also supported academic performance, then maybe the university would be more likely to support the program in some way. So that was an important component, the academic resilience. As I mentioned, we thought that partnering with the CWC would really strengthen our intervention. So I reached out to the director and he was really supportive of this idea. It was wonderful. He provided information on our program to the counselors there to get them interested in working with us. And several of them reached out with interest in helping. but they also helped us by referring students to our program, which was wonderful too, because it showed that they believed in us and they had faith in what we were doing. So we decided to run a pilot program before beginning the research study. At the time, we had about 6 weeks remaining in the semester, so this wasn't enough time for a full study. But it was a good amount of time for us to be able to get a sense of the students' interest and their engagement and the best structure for the program. It would also give us practice on combining the CWC counselors with our program, which was a really key part, we believed. And then we had time during the summer semester to really kind of put together the research protocol. I want to quickly share a video with you that was created about the program. This was something we used to help recruit students. So this was following our pilot study, and also to kind of get the word out to faculty and other people at the campus that might be able to help us build this program. Students across the country are really struggling with lots of issues. They're under a lot of pressure. They're dealing with stress and depression, anxiety. So we have started this therapeutic horticulture program so that they can come here and get some relief from that stress.
I'm an international student from Pakistan. I came in the middle of the pandemic. After living in Gainesville for 3 to 4 months, I contacted the wellness center and told them how I feel here, alone, isolated, friendless. They suggested me this program.
I think coming to the gardens allows me to distract myself for a short time from all the stress of school and exams, and it takes away a lot of that stress that I feel throughout the day.
One of my friends invited me because she knew that I love working with my hands, and that, art or like handcrafting activities I really like, so that's how I heard about it.
We're combining horticulture activities with wellness strategies so that the student can learn kind of both things together and take a bit of horticulture and a bit of a wellness strategy, combine them together, and then take them home with them. We're trying to create a community here, and it's a really wonderful way for the students to come together and be supportive of each other, and we've been seeing some really great things.
It's great. It's always nice to meet, other students who are having same struggles or different one, but we always can learn from each other. I really enjoy it. Yeah, I definitely encourage students to come.
There is something about the nature that makes you feel alive, rejuvenates you, and that's what helped me the best.
So that gives you a little sense of our space and how the students were feeling about the project. But once that pilot study was complete and we had gathered some feedback from the students and analyzed our structure and our delivery, then we went ahead and developed our therapeutic horticulture protocol. And we applied for IRB approval. That's the Institutional Review Board, and it's basically ethics approval. And so in our first phase, we decided to measure stress, anxiety, and general resilience, as well as academic resilience. So back to our research question: would a structured therapeutic horticulture program help UF students alleviate distress and increase resilience? We identified 4 goals of our program that we thought could lead to beneficial effects for students participating, and these became part of our protocol. So the first goal, there's the first 2 goals. One was to build skills and confidence in working with plants. Also, we wanted to introduce and practice a wellness strategy every week. We also wanted to work to help the students increase their understanding of the role of plants and nature in their personal wellness. And then the last one was to build community among participants. So every session we designed, everything we thought about the program, we were really trying to focus on these 4 goals and combining them whenever we could. So I want to go through each one of these a little bit. The first one, to build skills and confidence in working with plants. But one of the things we did to really emphasize this was at the beginning of every session, students come into the greenhouse, and when they first start the program, they get assigned a little basically it's a biodome. It's a little hydroponic mini greenhouse. We pair them up with another student, so they're not doing it in isolation, they're doing it with each other. And at the beginning of every session, they come and they take new cuttings or they plant new seeds and they get these started in these little hydroponic systems. As the plant grows roots, then they learn how to transplant that. We talk about plant care and the different needs the different kinds of plants have, and then they take those home. They're with us for the semester. So if a plant doesn't do well at home, they can bring it back in. We can kind of troubleshoot and figure things out. And maybe a plant doesn't make it, the cutting doesn't make it, so we try again. And so through this, over the course of the semester, first they're really excited to come because they love increasing their plant collection, but they're also learning about the different aspects of different kinds of plants and some basic propagation techniques. The second goal to introduce and practice a wellness strategy, I mentioned our partnership with the CWC. A counselor comes over from that the Counseling and Wellness Center every week to teach our students some kind of a wellness strategy. We do things like mindfulness, cognitive diffusion. We use some different kinds of CBT and DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy skills like tip skills. We talk about setting and enforcing boundaries and gratitude and growing resilience and some things like that. So something new is introduced every week. We practice it. We share about our experiences and our struggles, and then hopefully we revisit those over the course of the semester. We know that not every wellness strategy is going to work for every student, but by introducing 12 to 14 over the course of the semester, hopefully at least 3 or 4 of those will resonate with the student, and they can continue to practice those. And then in terms of the concept of increasing their understanding of the role that plants and nature play in their personal wellness, we all know how important plants and nature are for us to be healthy, both physically, cognitively, emotionally. And so students aren't necessarily aware of that. You know, this generation hasn't necessarily grown up gardening. Maybe their grandparents garden, but at least in the US, it's less likely that their parents may have gardened unless they come from a rural area. So we need to help them understand this concept and show how that works. So we always take at the sort of second part of the session is our actual therapeutic horticulture activity. We're doing a plant-based activity that we are pairing with that wellness strategy. And we're creating metaphors or we're creating literal connections or whatever it might be between those concepts so that students can kind of start to recognize how that interacting with the plants and nature is really good for them lifelong, not just while they're in the program. And then finally, building community among participants. This is so important. You know, many of our students feel isolated, they feel disconnected. We are a huge university. And while you think that that means you're surrounded by people all the time, in fact, it can be isolating because you don't necessarily feel like you're part of any one group. And so our goal is to build community within our program. Students feel like they belong there. They're meeting other people that are maybe very different from them in terms of their major and their background and their race or whatever that might be. But we find ways to build into the program where we're kind of encourage them to interact with each other and intentionally do activities where they're working together. This just is really important. And I always feel like another aspect of that is that we want the students that come to the program to feel a sense of ownership over the program, because I think that helps them feel a sense of ownership over their wellness in the program. So they're involved in cleaning up with us, you know, helping us put things away, helping us get materials out. That I have always believed helps to increase that sense of ownership that, you know, you're responsible for the things that are in the greenhouse. And so that's been a really great way to build that community as well. So I wanted to give you a few examples of how we might pair some of these things together. One of our pairings that we do quite a bit is the concept of beginner's mind. That's our wellness strategy with growing microgreens, which would be our horticulture activity. So beginner's mind, if you're not familiar with it, this is a Zen Buddhist practice. It's the practice of approaching life or tasks or studies or just a situation with an attitude of openness, eagerness, and most importantly, a lack of preconceptions or a lack of kind of thinking that you know what's going to happen. So it means temporarily setting aside your past knowledge, your judgments, even your ego to see things with fresh eyes. You know, when you assume you already know everything, you know what's going to happen, then you close yourself off to new information or nuances or alternative solutions. And when you're thinking about mental health struggles, this is a really important concept. So we often pair this with microgreens because I don't know about you guys, I'm guessing you feel the same way, but every time I see a seed germinate and pop up through the soil, it creates a sense of awe and wonder in me. I mean, I've probably seen 100,000 seeds germinate, and I still have that incredible feeling. So helping the students to recognize that and sort of embrace that sense of awe and wonder and curiosity is a way that we can kind of pull these concepts together. Another pairing that we often do is creating bottle terrariums with the concept of setting boundaries. So the setting boundaries is the wellness strategy. And, boundaries are connected to our personal values, our beliefs. They can be set around various contexts or experiences throughout our life. A student has a lot of types of boundaries they need to be considering, whether it's their personal boundaries, maybe it's the boundaries with their mentor, maybe with their romantic partner, their roommate, their family members. And so thinking about these different kinds of relationships and reflecting on them can really help. So these boundaries can help us to maintain self-respect, to maintain emotional well-being through clearly highlighting what is acceptable and not acceptable in our own lives, and then figuring out how to communicate that to other people. So a bottle terrarium is a glass enclosed environment. It's designed to grow plant cuttings in kind of warm and humid conditions. Bottle terrariums in our program allow participants to practice creativity through custom designs. We often have little plastic dinosaurs and things like that that can stick in there and make it a little bit whimsy as well. But they are these miniature ecosystems. They require pretty low maintenance care as long as you've set them up correctly, and they are really accessible for beginners. So we can encourage the students to reflect on the layers in the terrarium and each layer's purpose, just as you might be reflecting on the different kinds of relationships in your life. Also, the importance of the boundary of the container, the purpose that that serves. So you can see sometimes these are literal, sometimes they're a little bit more metaphorical connections that we're making. Another one, this is one of the students' favorite activities, is kokedama, or Japanese moss balls. So we often we have a couple of different activities we pair, or wellness strategies we pair this with, but most often body-centered practices. So what we're doing with this one is really helping the students to think about the similarity between releasing the plant's roots and then shaking out their own limbs. So body center practices, we do some breathing techniques, we do some self holds, we do some shaking activities. They body center practices can really help for managing stress because we're focusing on using our physical movements, our breath work, our sensory awareness to promote emotional well-being while still regulating our feelings of stress. And these approaches can really help us to develop a sense of calm, grounding, and decrease those feelings of stress and anxiety. So thinking about some of the aspects of this kokedama, this containerless container, we're building this new container of soil and moss around a plant that the student has chosen, and then wrapping it with the twine to keep it all together. And so, we can relate that wrapping to that self holds and those body centered practices. We can relate it to support and all sorts of things. And there's an element of creativity in here as well because they can choose different colors. We also teach them how to build a very simple macrame hanger that they can put their kokedama in. And then the last one I'm going to mention is a pairing that we do of a loving kindness meditation with foliage bouquets. So loving kindness meditation, if you're not familiar with this one, it's a mindfulness practice which centers around feelings of compassion and love towards yourself and towards others. In the version that we use, the facilitator guides us through this vision of a flower garden in our heart, and that every time we pick a bouquet to give it to somebody, more and more flowers grow in our heart. So we kind of walk through that idea and giving these gifts away. And there's even a section in it where you are picking a bouquet for somebody that may be difficult in your life, somebody that you sort of struggle with, and giving that and away to that person and kind of seeing how that feels. So loving kindness meditation allows people to focus on feelings of inner peace, of gratitude, compassion, And this practice can enhance students' emotional well-being and reduce feelings of stress and anxiety. The foliage bouquet part, we invite the students to wander in the garden and to collect just foliage, no flowers from the garden. And we encourage them to recognize the opportunity for sensory stimulation while they're looking for that foliage. We want them to consider the benefits of gifting the bouquet to themselves or maybe to somebody else, and just kind of recognize that opportunity for creative exploration. You can see in the lower picture here, there actually are a lot of flowers. What we usually do is we bring in some flowers, we have them choose the foliage and arrange the foliage bouquet, and then add a couple of flowers to them. And this, this picture, they've added lots of flowers, which is fine. But one of the things we want the students to recognize is that beauty comes in a lot of different ways, and that a bouquet of foliage can be stunningly beautiful. It has a lot of texture and size and colored leaves, and that it's an inexpensive way for them to create some beauty in their lives as well. Most students can't afford to buy flowers for themselves or for other people all the time. And there's some creativity involved here as well, where we've given a lot of different uh, materials for them to personalize these bouquets. So we're encouraging them to deepen their connections with one another. At the end of every session, we always go around and share what we have felt or created, or whatever might have come up while we were doing that activity. And that's another way to help really build that community. So those are just some examples of how we're pairing activities. So this study used a single group repeated measures design using a pre-post survey method. The students would sign up for a semester. We usually, depending on the semester, have about 13 weeks of programming. And so when the students, and I will back up here and say, students are welcome to participate in this program and not participate in the research. The program comes first, the research comes second. But the large majority of students are willing to participate in the research, and that's great because it helps us understand better. So they come and they sign up for the program, and their first session, they filled out an informed consent, giving us consent to include them in the research. And then they fill out a demographic survey and then several psychometric surveys to measure the things like stress and anxiety. And then they immediately join the therapeutic horticulture session. After their 8th session, they then fill out the survey a second time. And so the exact same psychometric surveys, we measure again. And what we're looking for is there a change between their pre-survey and their post-survey? And hopefully they're all in the positive direction. The students are welcome to stay in the program for the rest of the semester, but we stopped collecting data after the 8th session. And the reason for that is we were aiming at 75% of the sessions that the student had attended. Students, because they're students, can't get to every session every week, although we did have some students that did. But so we couldn't make it 12 sessions, or we would not have any data to analyze. So that was why 8. Okay, so let's take a look at some of our results. So the analysis of change from pre-survey to post-survey revealed significant positive changes for all the outcomes that we measured, which was really exciting. And I have to tell you that the first time we ran this, I thought we had made a mistake because they were all positive. State and trait anxiety were assessed using the State Trait Anxiety Inventory short form, and this inventory seeks to gauge anxiety levels. It's a very very validated use of personal anxiety, and it differentiates between the temporary condition of state anxiety and the more general or persisting trait anxiety. And this uses a 4-point Likert scale. So measures of state and trait anxiety were significantly reduced from pre to post survey. And there was a very large effect size for state anxiety and a medium effect size for trait anxiety. And for context, for those of you that aren't statistical experts, which I certainly am not, the effect size, excuse me, measures the practical significance or strength or magnitude of a finding. While statistical significance, and that's the p-value, which is in that second to last column, which is a little wonky, I'm realizing now, that tells you if a result is genuine and not due just to chance. It's the effect size that tells you how important or how large or how meaningful that result actually is in the real world. We also measured student stress, and their stress was measured using the perceived stress scale. This, again, is a very widely known, validated 10-item survey that uses a 5-point Likert scale. And our perceived stress scores were also significantly reduced from pre to post with a medium effect size. We measured general resilience, and this was measured using the brief resilience scale. This is a 6-item scale. It includes both positively and negatively worded statements that students respond to using a 5-point Likert scale. And this scale basically assesses one's ability to recover from stress. General resilience also significantly increased with a small effect size. And then finally, we also use the academic resilience scale. This is a 30-item vignette-based scale that measures academic resilience based on specific adaptive, behavioral, and cognitive affective responses. So basically, as the students taking this survey, they are presented with some kind of a vignette that represents academic adversity, and then they're walked through a series of questions to try to establish how they would handle that situation. Would they fall apart, or would they figure it out and move forward? That's very simplified, as I've just said that. But basically, the scale is used to explore process rather than outcome aspects of resilience. So it's a really unique and valuable scale. And we found that academic resilience also improved from pre-test to post-test with a large effect size. Now, within the academic resilience scale, there are 3 subscales. One is perseverance, one is help-seeking behavior, and the third is managing negative emotions. So we found that they all had significant improvements with a large effect size for perseverance, a medium one for help-seeking behavior, and a medium to large effect size for managing negative emotions. This is a related study that we have completed and is actually in press right now. So hopefully it will be out published very soon. And in this study, what we were looking at were specifically stress and anxiety. And were there any differences between graduate students and undergraduate students? So we wanted to know if the program helped them based on their student status. So we collected the data for this study across 6 academic terms between fall 2021 and fall 2025. Same setup, it was the same therapeutic horticulture sessions. We collected data after the 8th session, same thing. And this particular analysis had 222 students in the analysis. And again, using the perceived stress scale and the state trait anxiety inventory that I mentioned. The participants included about 2/3 undergraduate students and 1/3 graduate students from all over the university. And our results indicated that there was a significant decrease in stress levels following participation for both undergraduate and graduate students, suggesting that therapeutic horticulture interventions may be effective in mitigating perceived stress at any academic level. Additionally, our results revealed statistically significant reduction in both state and trait anxiety, again suggesting that therapeutic horticulture is effective in addressing both short-term and long-standing anxiety for both groups. So although both groups reported significant reductions in stress and anxiety after completing the therapeutic horticulture program, there was no meaningful difference in how undergraduates versus graduate students responded over time. Both groups in the study demonstrated comparable reductions in anxiety and stress. That was a surprise for me. I wasn't sure which we were going to see have a higher change, but I was expecting that one or the other group would. What I think is exciting about this finding is that it really suggests that the process underlying change may operate similarly across student status. So taken together, these findings suggest that therapeutic horticulture interventions aimed at reducing anxiety and stress may be broadly beneficial across student populations, even when those students' stressors differ in nature. Obviously, the stress that undergraduates are going through is different than the stress that graduate students are going through. And this has some implications for campus-based programming where interventions may not need to be extensively tailored by student status to actually produce some meaningful psychological benefits. Another study that I'm working on now, I hope I'll get to submit it somewhere in the next 6 months or so, is about belongingness and loneliness. Loneliness among students is really strongly linked to lower belonging, poorer mental health. Research tells us that students frequently experience loneliness, are much more likely to report depression and anxiety than their peers that rarely or never feel loneliness. And actually, from a university perspective, students who feel lonely are more likely to report that they don't feel supported by their college or university. So in our study, we measured changes in belonging using the general belongingness scale. This is a 12-item scale that kind of is measuring, half of it measures acceptance and inclusion, and the other half measures rejection and exclusion. So we found statistically significant improvements in belonging for those students that participated in those 8 therapeutic horticulture sessions, and the effect size was large. I'm not giving you the numbers here because the paper's not published yet, same with the undergraduate and graduate one. But I did want to point it out, and this really is important because research has shown that a strong sense of belonging is associated with reduced health problems, enhanced immune functioning, improved social and psychological functioning. Evidence from multiple disciplines consistently demonstrates that socially connected individuals live longer. So overall, these findings are really exciting. They reveal that a structured therapeutic horticulture program led to significant improvements in general and academic resilience, reductions in stress and anxiety, and increase in belonging. And these findings are noteworthy because given the scarcity of the research of this area, there's not a lot on there's a research of student mental health and therapeutic horticulture. So hopefully they contribute to a better understanding of the connections between plants and nature and student mental health. I think that this study really supports the notion of an expanded, more holistic paradigm of addressing student mental health on campus, and one that moves beyond a sole focus on the Counseling and Wellness Center. There are so many students whose mental health can be met by accessible alternative routes to professional intervention, and these findings support that possibility. And please know, I'm not saying that students shouldn't be seeking, professional counseling if they need it. Absolutely, they should. But therapeutic, whoops, sorry, just back up here a little bit, having trouble with my pointer. Therapeutic horticulture programs may reduce the burden on university counseling centers by engaging students who are not yet in acute need, but whose needs are increasing. So that could be a really great pairing. So by sharing experiences and working together on intrinsically meaningful horticulture-based activities, students in the program developed community support, social support while learning coping strategies and also horticulture skills. The process showed us that students could improve their confidence, their self-efficacy, their self-worth, strengthen their overall health and wellness, and boost academic resilience. However, this study has several limitations, and I do want to mention those. First of all, there was no random assignment in this study, and the reason for that is because this is a program to serve students first and a research study second. I felt that it was not ethical to deny a student access to the program if we had space. Also, participants signed up for the study knowing that there were horticulture activities involved. So the sample could be subject to selection bias, since it's possible that some participants may have had a positive attitude toward the intervention, and that's why they joined. Also, the study did not include a, whoops, sorry, getting ahead of myself. The study did not include a control group. So again, that relates back to the ethics of letting the student join if we had space. So we don't truly know whether the reported changes were in fact due to the therapeutic horticulture intervention or just some other external influences during the semester. We have actually, because the program has become popular and better known and people are signing up or trying to sign up, those students that can't match it with their schedule, their academic schedule, we put them on a wait list for the next semester. And so we also invite them to be part of our comparison group, control group, basically. And so they fill out the same surveys. We haven't analyzed that data yet, but we have about 30 students in that group so far. So we'll continue to do that. And then the other thing that I want to mention is the other limitation is that all of the outcome measures are use I'm sorry, they're all self-reported data, which could be influenced by social desirability bias, leading participants to over-report improvements and under-report negative emotions. We don't know, but it's always a possibility. As I wrap up here, I just wanted to mention some of the student statements. The students, one of the things I love working with students is they just wear their hearts on their sleeve and they tell us how much this program has helped us, helped them. They talk about why that is. They talk about sharing it with their friends and things like that. But we have an exit survey, and these are some of the great things that students have said. I'm not going to read them all here, but things like watching their sleeping habits improve, their anxiety lessen, their activity increased, feeling like there's a sense of community and safe space, looking forward to the program every week and leave feeling calm and refreshed. A freshman talked about how it helped adjust them to college and learn many skills that they carry throughout their life. A PhD student talked about how much the program has helped them and prevented them from having mental breakdowns while working on their dissertation, which I can identify with. So really great to hear that stuff. Some future studies, I mentioned the loneliness and belongingness. One of the things I'd like to look at as part of that study is whether the effect is greater for international students and for many of the minority groups involved. I mentioned the comparison group. We want to kind of look at that data in relation to our experimental group. And then I'm also really interested in the residual effects. We've started to do 6-month follow-up surveys to see if there's a residual effect to this experience of participating in this program. We have a lot more to do. One of the things I would love to do is to partner with other universities. This is a big goal of mine, to see whether or not we can replicate the results outside of our setting. We need to explore whether the size of the school, the geographic location, the country it's in, the campus setting has any influence on results. So I really hope to partner with other schools and provide training on the delivery and the protocol, the sessions to the leaders at the partner school. And the goal would be to replicate this study and to publish the findings, hoping to add to that evidence-based practice of supporting college students with structured therapeutic horticulture programming. One of the things we've done, and this is blurry on purpose, I can't share it with you yet, but develop this facilitator's guide. And this is basically an implementation manual for the program and the research study. But it includes all the goals and the activities, the wellness strategies, the considerations and pairings and intentional cues and suggestions for strengthening that therapeutic aspect of the program. And this has been a really great tool for us, and one that I hope we can share with other universities. Just want to acknowledge some of the people that and organizations that have helped support this study. The Love for Lawrence Foundation, Costa Farms and Bonnie Plants are really large American plant and nursery companies. And then we had received almost $500,000 from the University of Florida to expand the services we were offering to students based on our preliminary results, and that was amazing. And then, of course, also the Counseling and Wellness Center. And finally, I just want to say thank you. These are some QR codes if you want to get some more information about us, our certificate program, also the website for our therapeutic horticulture program, which will be changing in the next few weeks as we shift from one location to another, and then my faculty page at University of Florida if you would like to reach out to me. And I just want to thank you for spending some time with me today.
Thank you, Leah. That was incredible. I really enjoyed that. I've been taking notes so furiously. I'm starting to burn up the pen and the paper. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I just find that was so illuminating, and it's been really sparking off ideas. I love the pairing of the wellness interventions with different aspects of therapeutic horticulture. And yeah, I'm inspired and buzzing. So I just wonder if anyone else has got some comments, so that maybe Jenny can invite people if you want to put your hand up, or if there are any questions that you'd like to write in the comments. Over to you. Oh.
Yep. Carolyn's asking if the QR codes could be shared or emailed, please. I think we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to figure out how to
Do that.
We can make that happen.
We can make that happen. We'll make that happen in some way after. That's lovely.
Yes.
So thank you. I think everybody's been listening so intently. We've not had a chance to write our questions in the chat. So if anyone is thinking of something just now and would like to raise their hand, I had to ask earlier today because I think Zoom have moved where the raise your hand is. But if you click on your more, three dots in the bottom of the screen, it says reactions. And if you click on that, it shows you where you can raise your hand if you want to pop your hand up and actually ask. We'll ask you to unmute and voice your question. But I wondered, Leah, I have a question for you. It was absolutely fascinating, and I'm just really interested in, you must have got feedback from your students when you were doing this, and did they feel these positive effects? Were they voicing this when they were with you in the sessions? All these positive effects that you were reporting there.
Yes, they did. And of course, it depends on the students. We would have some students that were quite quiet and maybe more private. It's always a wonderful thing to see those students open up over the course of the semester as they feel more safe, part of this community that we're building. But then some students are telling us from the third session how much they look forward to this. And it's the beacon of their week because it's a place they can come and forget about school and just relax and connect with other people. So it's a little personality dependent for sure, but we do hear that a lot, which is, the numbers are important, but to hear it anecdotally from the students as well is one of the things that's so energizing for us during the semester and really make us want to work hard to find some ways to connect them with plants and nature and with each other and with these wellness strategies.
Yeah, fantastic. And sorry, I did have another question there, but it's popped out of my head. I hope your facilitator's guide will be for sale or share.
We are trying to figure that out, how that's going to be distributed. So yes, it will be in some fashion for sure.
Fantastic. Fiona, would you like to ask your question? Fiona.
Yes, please. Well, I had so many questions. I'm really glad you're following up with residual effects research because that's something that I find helps us make the case here. If those results are sustainable, then that is so much ahead of so many other interventions, that sustaining, being well 6 months, 3 months later is a real advantage on many interventions. But I really absorbed everything about the student data, but I want to sort of go back to your depression study, if I may, that you mentioned. I know that was a long time ago, but there's a perception here amongst psychologists, and it does limit what people can get from the National Health Service, that severe depression is not a candidate for therapeutic horticulture. Yeah, fine, mild and moderate, but severe is it doesn't work with that. There's no evidence, and therefore it's not in the framework. And if it's not in the framework, then psychologists can't recommend it. So it's a huge barrier. So I just was curious to know a little summary of the findings and where we can read more about that.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to share you the links to all of those papers.
Okay, fantastic.
I think in that particular study, and that was with the inpatients that were in electroconvulsive therapy, we were trying to look at the difference between those that came to the program and those that were a control group that did not come. It was a very challenging group to work with, not in terms of their struggles, but in terms of the regularity and being able to compare oranges to oranges. In this particular unit, people might come in for a week, they might come in for 3 days. They had to go through a sort of onboarding process before they could actually come to see us. So although anecdotally and to some degree on paper, we were seeing some positive change, we didn't feel like it was clear enough that it was the therapeutic horticulture program because of course they're also going through ECT therapy and they're figuring out medications and that sort of thing. So we did publish the findings more as a lessons learned kind of thing, but didn't feel like we really had a clear understanding. I will say that when we go out to the psychiatric hospital every week, we're working with some folks with pretty severe depression out there as well. And I think that the positive change that we're seeing there is that it is a very different aspect of their day. Most of their day, they're sitting in a unit that has some windows, but they're not going outside. It's pretty institutional. And so coming and being able to put their hands in some dirt or seeing greens, smelling things, having some sensory interaction is a really positive thing for the time that they're experiencing that. We have done some very minor research with that group, like, how is your mood coming in? How's your mood going out? And we definitely see improvements. The patients always say they want to come to another session, but we haven't measured anything beyond that, any kind of a lasting change. But they do say that they ask when is the therapy group coming back? When's plant therapy coming back? So we know that it's having some kind of a positive effect, but can't really determine the level of that, if that helps. So
Great. Yeah, lots of difficulties there, but that's
yeah.
that's great to hear. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Frances, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Thank you so much, Lee. That was an amazing presentation. I'm at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, and I've just started a student-centred allotment group, specifically due to I'm a student advisor there, to the amount of mental health that students are coming to me with, and the lack of sense of belonging on university. So the allotment group's in its first year, but you've really inspired me. And they're growing edible plants at the moment, so vegetables. And I just wondered what your experience was with students, whether they prefer edible or non-veg or non-edible crops or
That's
plants.
that's a great question. And because of our setup, we don't have it and actually the picture behind me, we haven't really had much of an opportunity to grow a lot of edibles outside of the greenhouse. So we can do herbs and some things like that. So that has been a small part of our program. So we really are focused a little bit more on the greenhouse kinds of activities, propagation of tropical plants, the kind of nature crafts and some things like that. As we're moving to our new situation where we've got row crops and stuff, I think we're going to try to blend that into the program a little bit more and find out. I know students love to harvest. They love because they don't have a lot of money for food either in many cases. So the excitement of the harvest and of growing something that they've done themselves and then being able to eat it is something that's very motivating for them. But I don't have a whole lot of experience on a regular basis to let you know kind of versus one or the other. I also know that the students love taking plants home. They love having the tropical plants. They love doing some of the plant art kind of things because it gives them an opportunity for that creative expression, which I think is really important. But my guess is that the crops would be just as positive.
Oh,
So I'm
thanks for
excited to
that.
learn more about your program.
Yep, no, absolutely. I'll make connection. I had greenhouse envy because we don't have a greenhouse, but we do have lots of outdoor grounds. So
Yeah.
yeah, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Frances. That was really interesting to hear about that. We'd love to know more about it.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I'd be happy to share it. I'm not at this stage doing a proper scientific research study. It might come. It's very much in its infancy, but yes, gaining a lot of traction, and we have a lot of outdoor space at Heriot-Watt, so it seemed the ideal thing to do. So yeah, I'm happy to keep you posted.
Oh, that'd be lovely. It'd be lovely if you could put yourself on our Trails map, if you'd like to do that. That would be
Okay,
fantastic.
I shall. Yes, yeah, no, I will do that.
That'd be great. Great, thank you. Has anyone else got a question or anything that they would like to share with Lee and the rest of
There's
you
a question from Chelsea in the chat.
in the chat? Chelsea. Sorry, I'm not seeing that. Chelsea, would you like to voice your question, Chelsea? Should so Chelsea's asking the question. She's interested in whether if benefits were more significant for younger students, if you have that kind of data.
Yeah. Oh, she's just saying her mic's not working.
That's fine.
Yes, that's a great question. And I think that's what we were trying to get at with that undergraduate versus graduate level. And I know I think in Europe, you refer to as postgraduate, don't you, when you're after? So we use the term graduate student. And it depends on the type of struggles that the student is having. If it's loneliness, that and like not feeling connected, really struggling to make that transition from living in your home, your family home, to being on your own in college, which comes with a lot of exciting things too, but also some really stressful transitions, then yes, I think it can be more helpful for younger students. But at the same time, graduate students who are working on their masters or their PhDs, they're dealing with all this other kinds of stress with, making sure their supervisor approves of them, making sure they're hitting those deadlines, that their research is actually working the way they think it's supposed to be working. And they may be struggling with more financial situations and also disconnection because they're isolating themselves. They may have a group of friends, but they're so stressed they're isolating. So it really kind of, I think as our research showed with graduates versus undergraduates, it's beneficial for everybody and not more so, at least in our sample of 222, not more so for one age of student than the other. But I do think it really relates to the type of stress that they're dealing with. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's our experience.
And the loneliness factor, Lee, did your students, did they, well, you might not know this, but do their friendships continue after the sessions? Do they meet up and, interact with each other?
So that's such a good question. And we don't actually measure that. So I only know when students talk to me. And I can tell you that I had some students that came in not knowing each other, and now they are partners for life, which is really exciting. And are, they're not quite married yet, but they're moving in that direction. But I do see that students make connections, and I do hear that they are seeing each other outside. I don't know that all students are doing that, but I hear it enough that it makes me feel like it's a place where that can happen. So yeah, and I sometimes it is students that are within the same major and they just haven't known each other, but now they have a lot in common and maybe we'll study together, or it's two students from very different majors, or in some cases graduate students that are international and have kind of didn't know each other, but we have a pretty strong international community at UF, and so maybe they can then pull each other into their circles. So yes, and it would be really great to measure. And you just put a light bulb in my head about that could be another piece. One of the things we are starting to measure is are after the fact, are students collecting more plants? Are they adding to their plant collection? What does that plant collection mean to them? Does it help them feel less stressed? Do they feel, some of the emotional connection to the plants? We're starting to measure that, but it makes me want to put in a question about friendships and ongoing friendships.
Lovely. Anyone else? Has anyone else got any more comments or a question that they would like to raise at all? No? Well done. I'll hand you back to Fiona. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you all for your questions, and Leah for fielding them so well. I think we could really go on for another hour, actually, because there's a lot I'd like to ask you, but we must stick to our scheduled time. Just to thank you again, Leah. It's been so relevant to our practice. I think there's a lot we can take and apply to our own practice and reflect on over time, not just immediately this week, but in the future. And I think to follow your research and your progress, should we just look to your page on the university site and then the therapeutic horticulture project page as well?
Yeah, I think so. And we also have an Instagram, therapeutic horticulture UF, and if we publish a paper or something, we'll put it out there as well. But
Great.
yeah, I think those are great ways.
Fantastic, because it's sometimes a struggle for us to keep up to date with the research in the field, and it's great to have a go-to place to get the latest. So that's really good. We will add that to our connections and our links. So a very big thank you to you. And thank you to all of you for joining us and for your questions and comments.